Okay, we'll call the regular meeting council to order for 3 p.m. Ask for a motion from Councillor Moore. The council adopt the agenda for this regular council meeting, April 26th, as to amend and add item 8.5, proposed purchase of provincially owned properties.
I will make that motion. Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that my script has their heroes on it, and it does. Got it. Okay, any question? Kathy, sorry.
Yes, sorry. Are we also going to add that proclamation from the High River District Healthcare Foundation?
High River Healthcare Heroes Day. That's what I was just checking. I've got it on my script. Is it not on your, is it on your guys' agenda that you guys look at? Okay, I've got it as 9.4 on my script. So let's amend the agenda, adding item 9.4, the Healthcare Heroes Day proclamation. Do you accept that, Councillor Moore?
I do.
Okay.
It is on our agenda. So.
Is it?
Yeah.
9.4, Bruce?
9.4. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, you're good. You see it, Kathy?
Have a day. I'm sure it's there. It must. Did we get a new agenda?
Quit acting like you're mayor.
Okay.
It's not mine.
I think Kara amended it.
I did, yes.
Okay. Okay, so everybody's good. Let me get to my. All in favor? Carried. That's for a motion from Councillor McMillan that the following are adopted by omnibus motion in accordance with council's procedure bylaw, the April 12th regular council meeting minutes, and the April 12th special council meeting minutes, and the strategic priorities chart.
I'll give you that motion. I just have a question though.
Correct?
When did we not, like I was going through past agendas, I couldn't find the April 1st meeting minutes. So have those just not been finalized or something? I just noticed because when I was looking at the agenda and saw April 12th, I thought we had that special meeting on April 1st.
That is correct, Councillor McMillan. We're still working on getting the details around those minutes.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Make a note of the April 1st minutes, please, Kara. No public comments. We'll move right into the public hearing. So just for clarification, we did have a public hearing with offsite levies a few weeks ago. But there are some amendments that we're doing to that bylaw. So because of the amendments, we have to hold another public hearing to address those. So this public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act RSA 2000 Chapter M26 and amendments thereto. I hereby declare the public hearing relating to bylaw 4598/2021 now open at 3:04 p.m.
So the purpose of amending bylaw 4598/2021 includes the following changes being made to bylaw 4586/2020, and it's to remove the recreation center expansion from the rates in bylaw 4586/2020, to update the rates to reflect the current estimated total project cost, factoring in the actual committed cost to date, and to update bylaw 4586 to provide greater clarity and to ensure it complies with the principles and criteria set out in the legislation. This public hearing has been advertised on the Town of High River's webpage and social media pages beginning on Friday, April 9th. It was also advertised in the High River Times on April 9th and the Town Crier on April 16th, 2021. Additionally, the public hearing was posted on the town's outdoor notice board. Hard copies of the proposed bylaw have been available for inspection at the reception desk at Town Hall and on the Town of High River's website.
Following rules of conduct will be followed during this public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point and shall be limited to 5 minutes in length. Order of presentation will be engineering, those supporting the bylaw, those opposing the bylaw, and any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes. There will be no debating the bylaw. Respect for staff, developers, council, and the public will be maintained at all times. So I'll hand it over to engineering. Riley.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. Can everyone see the presentation for today?
We got you.
Excellent. So we're here for public hearing on the offsite levy amending bylaw. So what are offsite levies? Offsite levies are a charge we apply to new developments within town to help pay for projects that are associated with that growth that are not included in that base development. So they're essentially projects as a result of new growth within the town boundary. So why are we amending the offsite levy bylaw? So the town received notice of appeal of our offsite levy bylaw to the MGB. Following the notice, council passed a resolution to do updates to the bylaw to address the appeal. Based on that, the Municipal Government Board granted us an extension to pass and deal with our amendments. And this is the amending bylaw that addresses those changes. So we've done engagement for this amending bylaw. As Kara mentioned, it's been advertised as well as posted. The development community was notified via email on the 31st and again on, March 31st and again on April 10th. We then did another follow-up on April 20th, offering to meet with the developers on the 22nd over Zoom on a lunch break. This was mainly to address changes that have been made since we originally advertised it. And it was also to answer any questions that may have come up from the original amending bylaw. So post-advertisement changes, we made 4 changes since it was advertised. The first one is we updated the bylaw number. We had 2 numbers transposed in it. The second and third change was to deal with contingency. We had a higher contingency applied to 2 projects than was applied to other projects. And to be consistent with the rest of the document, we reduced those to be in line with all the other projects. We added some clarity to the project description for the Fire Hall number 1 upgrade. There was no changes in the numbers, but the way it was conveyed in the original amending bylaw was not clear, and we added some additional clarity. And then lastly, the inner south zone actually decreases. And so instead of phasing it in, as was shown in the version that was posted, we changed that to implement the new lower rate immediately instead of being phased in like rates that increase. This, it could be argued if we phase that in, developers would be paying for projects that no longer apply to them because of the amending bylaw. And so therefore it should be implemented on year 1, which is why we made the change. Changes to project costs. So this is what interests the most for the development community. And these are the changes we've made to projects. So WL6 and WL7, again, the contingency was reduced, and it reduces these projects from 17.2 and to 12.5 million each. On the Fire Hall project, we decreased the leviable amount from 3.5 to 2.6. This decrease was attributable to removing the base building costs, which were, so the existing building was in the original levy. And so that's been removed, saying that's more of a life cycle maintenance cost and not a cost associated with growth. So it's been removed, as well as a regional benefit has been applied. So as the county pays for a portion of the operation, we have now removed a portion of the expansion cost because there is a benefit to the county for that expansion. So that has been removed from the cost as well. And then lastly, the rec center expansion has been removed. Until the referendum is completed, it is recommended that this be left out until we determine what scope is going to be and the costs associated with that scope. We currently are contemplating 2 scopes, or we have historically contemplated 2 scopes for this. And then after the referendum and council decides on a direction, we can then reapply and update the levies accordingly. And then so here is the new phase-in rate for year 1, 2, and 3. And then this one's probably of more interest. This compares year 3, so the ultimate final rate of each bylaw. So the original bylaw from February, as well as what we're proposing now through the amended bylaw, and the difference in the rates. You'll notice that we're averaging between about a 20 and 30% decrease, with the exception of the inner south, which is a little more. So it is a fairly significant decrease in the rates. Removing the, well, it was the rec center alone, I think was about 20 million. So it had a fairly big impact on the rates. And I guess last one is questions. I will add one thing in terms of the workshop we had on Thursday on Zoom. We had 3 attendants. One was a councillor, Councillor Nychuk, thank you very much, as well as 2 developer representatives. They received the same presentation council has received today. As well, we did have one question, which was, I thought, interesting and worthwhile sharing with council, in that why weren't annexed lands included in the amendment? And that's because we're not ready to include them. So they're not included yet. It's more than just adding the land. So when we annex the area, we have additional lands, and we can't just simply add those areas into the rates, which would decrease the rates, because there will be new projects associated with those annexed lands. So like the Northeast, for example, the country residential, I imagine there's some road and well, possibly road and possibly some stormwater projects associated with doing that. And so what does that look like? And what are the costs of those projects? And then phasing that in. So we do have to redo all our studies to update for any potential servicing associated with those lands. Then we would include that land. On top of that, council has started on the update for the town plan, which will shape what the growth in those areas looks like. And so I think that's important to have before we even determine what projects we want. So determine what that growth is going to look like, determine the projects we need to support that growth, and then we can include it and the area in the land. And that was the main question that came out of the workshop on Thursday. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you very much, Mayor. 30.
Carol, I don't know if it was just me, but your whole screen went black there for.
Oh, did it?
So,
Okay.
yeah, you can
Can you
repeat.
hear me now?
Yeah, we got you now. Just repeat everything.
Okay, so, and sorry about that, I just had a note saying that my internet's unstable. Riley, I was just wondering, has the population been amended? It used to be, the projected was 50,000 and now is it 25,730?
No, it has not been
Yeah.
amended. So it is still the lower number. So the 50,000 is the growth of the fully annexed area. And sorry, I don't have the other number off the top of my head, 37,000? Is that?
25,730?
Sorry, yes, that one is for the growth horizon. And so the projects are all based off the growth. So that was the cutoff. So any project that was deemed to be built after the cutoff is not included in the levies.
Okay,
So we're always running those two
Thank
numbers.
you.
One is the population of all the town area, and then which is a 50 or 55-year horizon or something like that. And then the 25-year horizon, which is the 20 some odd thousand, which is what the basis of the levies is and the basis of the cutoff on all those projects. So that's why future projects are deemed as not included. It is because of that, the lower number.
okay, thanks, Riley.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Cooey?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I know this has been a bit of a working project for some time in here. But Riley, just curious, if I understand correctly, this is going to come back for review in 2023, correct?
I won't commit to an exact date, but that is what our target is. Kind of like the discussion around the annex lands in terms of how fast some of this work happens. So if we do the town plan, then we do our infrastructure studies, and then we come back. Ideally, that would be the plan, and ideally that would be on that 3-year timeframe. But if council wanted to revisit this earlier because of the referendum and the rec center, as an example, we could bring it back earlier. And so we aren't, that would be our, I guess, planned or desired timeline, but there isn't saying we might take longer because of, it might take longer to pull some of this information together, or maybe we want to pull it forward. Maybe there's a lot of growth happening and we're saying, the current offsite levy structure doesn't fit the rapid growth we're seeing and we want to pull it forward. We can definitely do that as well.
Thanks, Riley.
Craig, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. No other questions for Riley. So there's no one registered to speak who supports, but we do have Blair Han on behalf of Lansdowne Equity Venture Limited. Will be speaking in opposition to the bylaws. We get Blair going.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Good afternoon. My name is Blair Han with Lansdowne Equity Ventures. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I did participate in the virtual meeting on April 22nd. That information session was very helpful in understanding the amendments. And like you mentioned a moment ago, it's been a work in progress. So I think we're getting there. So I do think it's very important for the municipalities and the various stakeholders in the community, like the developers, to work together to establish these types of bylaws so we can be as effective as possible in attracting investment and future growth to the town. That is something that's important to the development community as well as the municipality. So with that being said, we feel it is very important to look at the entire future plan for the town, which includes development areas, projects, et cetera, so we can provide a fair and realistic plan. We really do feel that we need to include the annexed areas. They were annexed last fall or last summer, I think it was late last summer, to see, we need to include those so we can properly evaluate the impact on the offsite levies. Riley did just touch on this a moment ago, and I brought the question up last week, and he did answer that at that time as well. But I think, to Riley's point he made a moment ago, I think it would be important for council to look at moving up that time frame. Ultimately, because annexing those lands and bringing those in for development will possibly require some other or additional projects, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to require double the cost of infrastructure, so to speak. There will be some efficiencies there. So bringing those lands into the offset levy bylaw could possibly see a rate reduction from what's currently being proposed, which has a significant impact on growth and development within the community and ultimately the cost to the end user. So, you know, building costs these days are on the rise. We all know it. We've all heard it. So if these levies right now in certain areas are being collected at a higher rate and they could possibly be lower, effectively this bylaw as it sits right now could make development and home building harder and more cost prohibitive than it already is. So we would be happy, as well as other developers in the community, to explore this further with council, town administration, in a fair and fully transparent manner. We want to work closely together. We want to develop a bylaw that we're all proud of and we feel is fair, and we can use to promote the town. So in summary, we would prefer to see the rates revised, or at least the annexed lands included sooner than later, now ideally. But if council doesn't agree with that, we would request that council include a mandate to immediately start this investigation. Understand it could take time, but we would prefer to set a process where we can all work through this together and not delay that for 2 more years if possible. So if anybody would like to discuss that further, we're more than happy to participate. So yeah, thank you for your time, and look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Blair. Just one question. You mentioned to start the investigation. Just clarify into which?
Investigation in terms of bringing the annex lands into the offset levy bylaw.
Okay.
Investigate in terms of the development impacts. Are other projects required? What are they? And then what is the impact on the current rates?
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Blair.
Yep.
Questions from councillors for Blair? See none. Excellent. Thanks very much, Blair. Appreciate you showing up.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, you too. Any further questions from council? Hereby declare this public hearing relating to bylaw 4598/2021 closed at 3:23 p.m. 7 minutes left. So we'll move right into this amending of the offsite levies. Riley, anything else to say before we move into this?
Nothing to add, Mayor Snodgrass.
Okay. Administration is looking for all 3 readings on this because this is an amendment to the full law. So I'm going to ask for the Councillor Moore to give first reading to amending bylaw 4598/2021. And I'll just go through the actual changes. The full motion is there where it's all there. And I'll just read out the actual amendments where the bylaw number was updated. A correction was made for contingency being applied to project WL6. Correction was made for the contingency being applied to project WL7. Additional clarity was provided in the description for project FL1. And as rates for the inner south zone decreased, the new ultimate rates come into effect upon the signing of the bylaw rather than being phased in over 3 years like the rates and zones that are being increased. So I'm just going to leave first reading there. We'll deal with first reading first, and then we can enter into discussion. So first reading from Councillor Moore, please.
I will make the motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. Questions, comments from council? Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just kind of some general comments. As I mentioned earlier, this has been in the works for a while. And I'm not convinced that we've quite nailed it yet. And that's my comments about that 2023. And I appreciate, Riley, that we want to have some of those documents in place. It has felt a little bit cart before the horse with now looking at a town plan. And I do think that town plan will help guide this document going forward. But I also feel it's important to get something on the books that reflects today's costs. So I am going to support it, but I do really want to encourage that we do take a look at it as soon as possible when all of those things fall into play. I wonder about the use of quadrants in such a small community, or if there's another way to ensure that we are just doing this as fair and equitable as possible. So just some comments that we need to get it on the books, but I also don't know that we've nailed it yet, but we're getting there. So I would like to see us continue to work forward and have a fairly short target date to revisit this. So thank you.
So Riley, can you just give me clarity on the reason for the 2023 dates again? I know you touched on it earlier, but
in terms of when we do that update?
yes.
So we would like to
addressing the concerns that Blair was speaking to as to the timeline, why it's 2023.
I guess
annexed lands.
if there was a desire to do it earlier, what we would do is pull ahead, and would probably have to do it concurrently with the town plan to some degree in terms of I think council is familiar with the infrastructure master plan or our utility master plan. So redoing some of our master plans to include that area to understand the projects that are involved to do that. Then we put costing to the project, and then we would update the offsite levy bylaw. And so
Gotcha. No,
they're not cheap reports. And I guess that's kind of where I'm going. We don't like to do them really frequently because they are a fairly significant cost to do the reports. Now, that said, some of them are, they're getting, the transportation one in particular is particularly old, but we haven't had a lot of growth, so it's been fine. And then the water sewer storm, I think Kaylee can correct me, but I think they're about 3 years old, so they're probably getting close to due anyway. So we could pull that forward, but it's a significant cost to do. And I guess that's probably my bigger concern about that whole thing.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying, and when you look at it, 2023 is not that far away, really. Especially when you got a municipal election that's coming up, council's going to change, and there's a whole new education that needs to go on with that, and then it's into 2022, and a lot of work to see anything before 2023 approved would be an enormous task. It'd be a lot. But if it's that important, we could do it. No further questions on first reading. Ask for the motion. All in favor on first reading? Carried. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman that council give second reading to the previously mentioned amending bylaw 4598/2021, and that council give unanimous to consent to proceed with third and final reading of amending bylaw 4598/2021.
I'll make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? Carried. As for a motion from Councillor Nychuk to give third reading to the amending bylaw 4598/2021.
Give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Questions, comments? All in favor? Motion carries. Thanks very much. Town audit results. Who's doing that one? Chris, Leanna?
It's actually Calvin Scott. Just
Oh,
bringing him in.
Calvin's here. Okay, great. Twice in 4 days, Calvin. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Am I up just like that?
Yeah, you go ahead. Floor is yours.
Perfect. We'll get right into it. I know you got a lot on the agenda. I'll try not to be as fast as the last time I went through, but we'll get going for you. The first thing we'll talk about today, we'll hit the independent auditor's report. We will run through the financial results, and we will talk a little bit about the notes to the financial statements. We'll run through the indicators of financial condition, which is the comparable graphs for you. We will run through the management letter briefly and the post-audit letter as well. So first thing, the independent auditor's report. These financial statements had a clean opinion. So the financial statements were prepared presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public accounting standards. The independent auditor's report also says that management is responsible for the statements, that you as a council are responsible for the oversight of management, and our responsibilities as auditors are to identify and assess the risk of material in the statement, understand the internal controls, evaluate the policies and estimates in those financial statements, conclude on the going concern assumption, which means you have the ability to continue to operate into the future, and evaluate the presentation of the financial statements. So again, because we had no issues with all of those, we issued a clean opinion. We'll move right into the numbers. So we'll start with the revenues of the town for the year. It's going to be 2020. We'll see the budget comparison and last year. The first thing we'll notice is that there is an increase on that bottom line of about $964,000. On an overall basis, taxes remained pretty close to what was there, both to budget and decrease from prior year. But the user fees were down $500,000. Fully expecting this one with closures to arenas and pools, public buildings, we're going to have lower fees coming through. We also have, I got to do a little share screen because I'm guessing I'm running through this without you seeing it. There we go. And now you can see what I'm talking about. So on our revenue side, we're going to be looking at some government transfers from operating would be down as well. This changes every year depending on what's happening with less going on this year. The most funds came through. Those would be included in the government transfer for operating as well. The most is the municipal operating support transfer, and that's going to be all related to COVID relief measures. Investment income you'll see is up about $1.7 million this year. So a significant increase in there. This includes a gain on sale. So at one point in time, the investments of the town were shown to be liquidated to take advantage, crystallize some gains that happened during the year. So we get a significant increase in the gain on sale, and we had an increase in the interest rates as well. So a significant windfall this year, if you will, with the investment income. For the development levies and license and permits, we're going to see a change in there that's going to be up for sure. The license and permits were up about 60,000. You can see development levies up about 77. So increased building permits, development levies this year, more building in general is going to show some increases there. The other revenues is going to be down this year about $100,000. So this is generally going to be donations and rebates. Last year, there was a large one-time donation from the Calgary Flames Foundation, which led this to decrease this year, be higher last year. On an overall basis, we're going to see Again, that $964,000 increase from last year, and a big shot over budget. So we're going to see the investment income is budgeted for on a low end basis conservatively, and then we had significant increases this year. On the expenditure side, we're going to see a decrease. So an increase in revenues, we're going to see a decrease in expenditures. So both things go in the way you want to see it. These are going to change depending. A lot of them will be because of COVID measures that these are down and or up. Legislative and council are down about 30,000 together. And we're going to see mainly because of meetings being down, less travel, less remuneration. The administrative costs are down about $1.4 million. So significant decrease here. And we're going to see this last year included a disposal of assets. So there was the sprung office building, some equipment, and then a large write-down of land on the 410 McLeod Trail. That made up about $1.3 million last year. And so that is not there this year. So that's where we see a significant decrease. And that was all non-cash items in the prior year, creating that difference. The disaster and emergency services, we'll see about $100,000 decrease there, just with less projects going on during the year. By law enforcement's up about $100,000. We had some increased fees with the CPO services contracted to Foothills County, so that increased that expenditure. We're going to see some water supply be up. Repairs and maintenance was up this year at the water treatment plant, and we're going to water treatment down about 164. So we're going to see variances between repairs and maintenance from year to year, depending on what goes and what needs to be fixed. Engineering costs, we saw an increase there this year, so just some staffing changes that are going to increase that. Land use is down about $82,000. So again, some staffing changes that happened in these departments, and that can change those costs. And economic development costs were down about $291,000. So again, staffing here, we had an unfilled position for most of the year, and then some more turnover that reduced those costs. And there was a signage project that was budgeted for, but that didn't happen during the year. So all over there, we get about $291,000 savings. And in the last major item you'll see the change in is going to be Parks and Rec, about $577,000 change in there. There was some decreased salaries for sure with facilities being closed, and some repairs and maintenance that happened this year, but that was offset with some large salary decreases. And we've seen this across the board with closures of arenas, pools, other public services. A lot of salaries are going to be down this year in comparison to last. So when we look at this on an overall basis, you're going to see the revenues once again increase by 964. The expenses are down about 2.3 million. So the excess of revenue over expenditures last year was at a deficit of 2.3. It came up to about $930,000 this year. So it's a big swing from the prior year. Below that, we show the capital revenues that come in. So government transfers for capital is about $24 million. And that leaves the town with an excess of revenue over expenditures this year of $25 million. Now, I doubt anyone believes that we actually put $25 million in the bank. This income statement does not include the capital purchases, of which those $24 million funded. It doesn't include debt repayments or transfers to or from reserves. And it also includes amortization. So about $7 million of expense that's non-cash. So we'll look at the cash flow statement to see what happened with that $25 million. And we can see that when we take out amortization of about $7 million, we add it back, a real surplus cash-wise comes to about $32 million. And then we can see what changed. The big thing is going to be deferred revenue. So during the year, there was a lot of funds that were spent, $20 million of deferred revenue, which is going to be capital grants for the most part, some operating, but mostly capital that would have come in either during the year or future years that were being spent this year. So when we take out those cash items that were received in the prior year, you can see that operations actually provided for $12 million of cash this year. What the town did with that was buy about $24 million worth of capital assets. They put about 3.6 into investments this year, and then repaid some debt, about 943. So no new debt, but this is a repayment of prior debt. And this results in a cash deficiency of $16 million. So we used up $16 million, even though the financial statement said we had a $25 million surplus. So when we start bringing in those debt payments, the capital transactions, we can see what happened on the cash side. And then we'll get into where the actual financial position looks. So this will be your financial assets. So what we own as far as cash, temporary investments, receivables. We can see there's a decrease here. So we just went through, we spent $16 million worth of cash on the cash flow side. The taxes are going to be up this year. We've seen this across the board with all municipalities, with some relief on tax payments and extended deadlines and just some non-payment. We've seen an increase in tax receivables in a lot of municipalities. The trade and other receivables, we're going to see an increase there. So this is money that's due to the town but had yet to be received at the end of the year. Prior year included about $3 million worth of MSI capital. That's been received. In the current year, at the end of this year, there's about $3 million worth of MSI capital, and that's why we have the increase. And the prior year was the federal gas tax fund, about 1.5 million. So this is just timing. The grants had yet to come in. They've been applied for, approved, everything else. And it will be in soon after the year end. The investments, as we talked about, we moved in about 3.6 million into those investments during the year, so we'll see an increase. On the liability side, or what the town owes, you can see that the accounts payable and liabilities are up significantly. And generally, this happens in any year where we're going to see significant capital spending. This year, with $24 million of capital spending, we can see why that'd be up. There's payables due on those capital projects. The employee benefit and obligations, we'll see an increase here of about $100,000. This is generally vacation payable. And once again, we've seen an increase here across all municipalities. Less people are taking vacations. More people are working a lot more hours. And so we've built up that vacation time. The deposits didn't have a significant change. The deferred revenue will run through, but you can see there's about a $41 million drop there. Sorry, a $31 million drop. So rather significant, or sorry, $21 million when we're looking at it. 60 less 40, 21 or I should look at my notes. I actually have it typed on there. So we'll look at that note to show you where it is, but this is going to be the spending of previous capital funds on big projects this year. So we'll show you where that goes through. But overall, your net financial assets at the end of the day. So we're looking at the bottom here. We're sitting at last year 19 million, this year 28 million. So a significant increase in those capital or in the net financial assets. So a good indication that the health of the town continues to improve. This wasn't a debt position, if you'll remember, 16, 17, I believe is the year it came out of there. And as those grants have come in for flood mitigation, slowly the town's built this back to where it needs to be. And we'll see that comparative when we go through the financial indicators. The actual $21 million difference, we can see where it comes from here. So this is the deferred revenue schedule for the town. You can see your top line there, the Alberta Environment and Parks. Started the year with 22 million and we're down to 11 million at the end of the year. So some significant mitigation work done. One of the other big spenders in there would be about the fourth line down, Southern Alberta Flood Response Program. Started the year with 13, spent a good 8 million in there and left with 5. So a lot of the flood mitigation recovery funds were spent this year. And that's why we're going to see a decrease in the deferred revenue, which is essentially externally restricted funds that have yet to be spent. The non-financial assets are composed of prepaids, inventory, and TCA. So we can see that there's not a significant change in the inventory, but prepaids are up a little bit. This is some new software agreements and prepaying some rent. So not a significant change, but it is up. Tangible capital assets, we talked about $24 million of additions. That included the fire hall for about 2.2 million. The Southwest Dike was about 11 million. See the Southeast Main replacement looked at around $3 million. There's a couple $1 million of sanitary work done, various vehicles, machinery, and equipment purchased, and that came to about $500,000. But overall, a pretty significant increase there of 24 million. And depreciation or amortization of 7.5 gets you your difference in your tangible capital assets. The accumulated surplus, what we're looking at is essentially the town's value, what you're looking at for investments, reserves, unspent, and what's been spent on tangible capital assets. So as we discussed, we have a good increase in the equity and TCA, thanks to some good additions this year. The unrestricted balance, unrestricted reserves are going to be at about $600,000 up from last year. and the internally restricted or the actual reserve balances themselves have increased by about 7.4 million. So the accumulated surplus overall and the net financial asset balance of the town have both increased to the positive. So a healthy year in managing to cut expenses while doing significant capital projects. Those capital projects really have increased that value significantly from last year to this year. When we'll have a quick look at those reserves, I said they went up, so you'll see some major changes in here. Of note would be the tax stabilization reserve. We can see at the bottom of the operating. So there's 4 million in the tax stabilization reserve. On the capital side, we can see that there was about $1.5 million in the community infrastructure reinvestment fund that got added this year. There's about 800,000 that went into the water utility and about 500,000 into the sanitary sewer. So there's some nice increases in the reserve balances sitting there for future projects, both capital and operating. The debt limit we'll run through quickly. No significant issues here. I just always like to bring it up with you that if the town is looking for debt, always make sure to normalize these numbers. So the debt limit includes all operating revenues and then includes one-time funding, like the most funds would be in here, insurance proceeds, rebates, donations. We always suggest that you would reevaluate this number and normalize it for any of those one-time amounts, should you plan on going for additional debt. But overall, a very low debt balance. The last of the notes, the financial statements, simply the COVID-19 note we have in all sets of financial statements for this year, simply stating that there's still uncertainty. We don't know what will happen in the future, but there is uncertainty of what could happen if we fall back into further lockdowns and what impact that might have on the town. And those are the financial statements. Are there any questions on those before I get into the indicators of financial conditions or the comparative balances to other municipalities?
No questions, Calvin. Go ahead.
Perfect. I will keep going. So before we get deep into these, I will tell you the comparative lines on here. So the blue line would be the town of High River. You'll see a red line, which shows the town average, and this is the average of all towns in Alberta. There is a comparable town average, the green line, and that's going to have 3 other communities in it. So that is Canmore, Strathmore, and Sylvan Lake. Those are the 3 communities in Alberta that have a population within about a 25% range or standard deviation of the town of High River. And the other line that's there is going to be the purple line, which is comparable population. So this is everybody within that same standard deviation, but could be a MD, a county, a city, or a village, depending on large villages. Generally, that's not going to be the case, but all population on there. So your most important comparables are probably the red and green line that we would look at. This graph itself is the assets to liability. So this is total assets. So we're looking at financial assets as well as non-financial. So this includes your tangible capital assets, your buildings, your underground structures, everything else, everything essentially to debt. And you can see this going up this year. So as you're spending deferred revenue, the total liabilities, which we went through $21 million decrease in that deferred liability or deferred revenue, that comes down. That's going to bring this graph up. So your total assets would include both that cash and they're going to show the assets that you purchase. So when you spend the deferred revenue, you get no change in assets and you get a solid decrease on the liability side. So that's why you're shooting up this year back up into the comparable basis with everybody else. So a solid movement here, spending those mitigation funds and putting them to good use. And that's why we're going to see an increase from prior years. The financial assets to liabilities takes out the tangible capital asset side of things. So although we can see that there's the same increase we see with the financial assets. So the liabilities had a significant decrease in spending that 21 million, and that has much more effect than the reduction in cash of only $10 million. So we can see a nice increase here, and then sitting right around in between those average rates again. So definitely trending in the right direction. The current ratio, you can see that the town sits well above all of the comparative averages. So the current liabilities would take out the debt, which you would have, any long-term debt, and it would also exclude all of those deferred revenues, which are those unspent grants. But on the other side, those unspent grants are sitting in current assets, in short-term items. So as you're holding a significant amount, and whether those be in investments or in short-term, they're still included on the current asset side of things in the financial assets. So you can see that having large amounts of grants and not including them on one side, but on the other side is what carries you up here. So the town still has a significant number of unspent grants, and as those get spent on capital projects, we'll see you come down in line with the average. But the reason you'd be up here, the majority of stuff is for having these grants still unspent at this point in time. The operating expenses to taxable assessment. So you can see that you have a decreasing this year. You'll note that your operating expenditures include amortization. So you have a lot of new assets as a town, having been significantly investing into underground structures for the last few years, which means you're going to have more amortization expense in comparison. So that would keep you up there for the most part. Your assets or your expenses also include, as I mentioned before, about a $1.3 million write-down last year. So we can see why that's coming down this year, having that decrease in operating expenditures. Trending in the right direction for sure in coming down there. And as you continue, you're still going to be on the high side with the significant amount of capital investment you have, but trending into the right direction. Public debt charges to revenues. You have significant revenues as a town. Your debt charges are fairly low in comparison. So that's why you'd be sitting on the low end of this scale, which is where you'd like to be. All your projects that, for the most part, have been mitigation projects and have been government funded, so there's been no need for any new debt, keeping on a lower comparative debt ratio than all other municipalities. This is the debt to revenue percentage. So on an overall basis, much the same scale. You can see that as you're paying down your debt, you keep getting lower and lower on this. So this is a positive graph for sure, to have far less debt to revenue on a comparative basis than other municipalities. The infrastructure investment is all over the map. What we've seen from most municipalities would be consistent with yours this year, significant increases in capital. There's been a number of government funded projects in the last year for most municipalities, and we've seen this trending upwards. So without having the 2020 comparatives on there, I can tell you our comparative for 2020 with other municipalities and having a lot of capital underway. The own source revenues. So this is graphs telling you how dependent you would be on government funding. This takes all of your revenues and excludes all government funding. And right here, you're in line with average comparison to all towns. Percentage is 1.5. Comparable town average is about 1.2, and the high end of town is 1.7. So you're sitting right in the middle of any comparatives that would be here. And this is just your non-government revenues in comparison to your taxable assessment. Government transfers to total revenues, you can see, is going to be high. So this includes all of your capital funding and your government transfers for operating. Not a surprise that we're going to be high in this end. With the amount of capital projects that we've done in flood recovery, we're going to have significant government revenues coming in to cover those costs. So you can see that we're going to be well above this for the past 5 years, which is not a surprise whatsoever. The reserves to accumulated surplus. So we can see that this is starting in 2016 is low, when we've been making a steady increase over time as the financial position of the town continues to improve. And those restricted reserves are at 30 million. 5 years ago, we're at 11. So we can see that the funds are coming back in and we're getting at that higher balance once again. Right in line with the other comparatives, the two important lines, the red and the green. So I'd say you're right in the middle there. 11% puts you in line with all town average. We've seen steady increases here in other municipalities as well that are the green line comparatives. So I would expect those to increase with you, but right in line with other municipalities. The accumulated surplus available for future use is following much of the same trend. If you look at the 2016 column, mentioned this previously, your total accumulated surplus was in a deficit of $20 million in 2016. And we're looking at a surplus of 36 million at this point in time. So you can see that there's been a significant trend over those last 5 years as the applications for mitigation projects have been successful and the revenues have come in. We're getting back into a position where we're accumulating a surplus on a regular basis and bringing it back in line with the comparative balances. So a good indication that as we mentioned in the financial statements, the health of the town continues to improve and the recovery efforts are definitely working. And that's the end of the indicators. Any questions on any of those comparatives? Then we'll move on quickly through the last 2 letters. We have the management letter for the year. We try to dig up any issues we possibly can. It's very difficult. Your management team does a very good letter or a very good job, so it keeps this letter fairly low. The only issue we found during this year that we found a system calculation issue on a couple of the assets during the year. Management will be looking at that, retuning those calculations. It was nothing significant. Just a computer issue that we found, brought to their attention, and it will be adjusted. But otherwise, we'd like to thank your team for being wonderful. They did a great job. We got this done fully remotely, and it was a wonderful process. The post-audit letter would tell you that we had no problems whatsoever. So we found no illegal acts or fraud. We had no disagreements with management. We encountered no difficulties during the audit. And it also tell you that there's some emerging issues coming out in the next years. And most of these will have no significant impact on your entity. So this is purchased intangibles that may be changing, the foreign currency and investment, the asset retirement obligation, revenue. So these are all going to happen in 2022, and we'll work with your management team to ensure if there is any changes that will affect your financial statements that they're dealt with. And the last change is the one for 2024, which is financial statement presentation. But as a town, you have a prescribed format for presentation of the financial statements. So generally, this won't cause any issues whatsoever. And that's going to be the end of my presentation, barring any questions or concerns or comments.
Thanks, Calvin. Well done. I don't have a single question on the floor, so you're good to go.
Stumped him again. I like it.
That's the job of an accountant, isn't it?
Yes. I love it.
Very much, Calvin.
Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Calvin.
As for a motion from Councillor Cooey, the council received the audited financial statements as presented and to direct administration to review the amortization policy and return to council in fall 2021 with recommendations regarding any proposed amendments. And the council direct administration to post the 2020 audited financial statements on the website and associated social media sites for the public to access.
We'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
I'm sure it'll be the most clicked on thing on the whole page, whole site. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Leanna. Very well done.
I couldn't do it by myself. I have to give kudos to the rest of the finance team.
Very well done to all of them. Thank you. Veronica, Columbarium.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here to present to you today. I'm presenting before you today about a capital budget amendment for a new columbarium in the Highwood Cemetery. So in 2017, it was identified that the town of High River was to design and construct a new columbarium. This columbarium was then designed and constructed, which houses 72 niches, and later there was a dome placed on top. This project was designed and delivered in 2018. The total cost of the project, including the concrete pad, was $90,000. As of March 30th, 2021, there are 16 niches available for purchase. Administration has been looking into a new columbarium as we're reaching full capacity in our existing columbarium. Administration has been in discussions with 4 companies who sell columbarias and have received 4 quotations from these vendors, which includes the prior vendor who also provided our first columbarium existing in our cemetery. The 4 companies are Alberta Wilbert Sales, KMI Columbaria, Rock of Ages, and Sunset Memorial and Stone. Do you have any questions about the amendment?
Well, you know I do.
I do, yes.
I'll let other council, if there's other council that have questions first, but do you have more to go through yet, Veronica? Or do you want to just go into questions right now?
Well, we did get price quotes for 48 niche columbarias as well as 108 niche columbaria as well. So we got quotes for both of those sizes and some little variations on like a domed roof, a flat roof. That was about the main difference between them. So.
Okay, so just so the council's clear and the public's clear, each of these niches can hold 2 urns as long as they're 12 by 12 by 16. They can hold 2 urns.
Yes.
And so each of these niches are sold for $1,500 each. So this is one of the only things.
In the current columbaria, I don't know that we've established a price for.
Right. Won't be less.
No, probably not.
And that's it's actually the $1,500 is on the mid-range to lower end of what other cemeteries are charging. But so if you look at the first project being $90,000 for that 7, and that's all the concrete and the landscaping and everything. It looks great. People love it. 72 niches at $1,500 is 108,000. So we had full cost recovery plus 18 grand on the whole thing. That's with all the concrete too. So now that that's in place, this new one would go be added to that. The concrete was designed to have future columbariums put around it in a specific design. So that's where this is headed. It's all good. It's full cost recovery. There's actually, it's an actual profitable portion of this that can keep this thing going. But to Veronica, my questions are the frustrating thing with columbariums and the previous ones that are out there is that different manufacturers have different ways of getting into them. Leanne is going to school me on finances here in about 2 seconds when I'm done here. Let's see, but so that's why I'm questioning, moving away from Sunset and going to the Rock of Ages. And yes, it's a Quebec company and everything else, and there's things to do with that. But every time you change, there's different screwdrivers, different accesses. They're all security screwdrivers, so not just anybody with a Phillips can go out there and start opening the columbariums up, of course. So it's often, from a funeral home standpoint, they're the ones that are going out and opening them, not the town. It's much easier for us to have the consistency of knowing what we need, but that's a minor issue to the whole thing. I'm questioning I see a quote from all of them for 48 niches, but I only see one quote for the 108. And Rock of Ages is the only one that in our package that has the 108 that I can see. So
no, there was quotes from all 4 for the 108 niche columbarium, but there's a separate line for if we purchased in a quantity of 3 of the 108 niches. That right. Line is on its own for Rock of Ages. So that's why it looks like there's only one quote on the 108, but there are 4 quotes for that as well, the 108 niche.
Well, I guess it's just in the summary that only shows the 48s in additional information. I didn't go through all of the actual. spreadsheets. Leanna, I'll let you talk while I'm digging through this. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention that we didn't actually make money on each of these niches. We also included in the original pricing is the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance and of grass cutting and even just sweeping off the concrete. It does cost money to do that every year. So we've included that in the original price of the 1,500.
Okay. The town has never swept off that. They have never done on the concrete. They have never done snow removal on that piece. I know because I did it a couple of times.
Okay,
So,
well, thank you for doing that. When we were coming up with the rate at the 1,500, we built in some of the maintenance and general maintenance and stuff out there for doing some of the clearing and grass cutting. So we will have to reevaluate that.
You're profitable.
Okay.
That'll be between you and I.
Yes.
No,
okay.
But and the grass cutting and everything, that's all, that was all, it's all part of the whole cemetery that gets done contracted as well. But you're absolutely right around that area. It all comes back. So I guess, Veronica, I'm okay with, the motion only asks for administration to spend the $70,000. But in the package, it's also that, you'd like to go with the Rock of Ages. I guess I'll question a little bit more on a Quebec company rather than something a little bit more local. It's a Calgary company, Sunset is. I guess I'll question, is this just let's go with the lowest bidder and move forward, or were there other things under consideration?
So Sunset Memorial, I don't think that they manufacture their own columbarium. So the granite and the sourcing, I think they design them, but I don't think they manufacture their own columbarium. So then they have the product shipped in and they assemble it. Whereas Rock of Ages, they own the granite quarry and they control the quality of the granite when they're cutting. And so they're not assembling it, they're cutting and manufacturing it from scratch. But also Rock of Ages is the only company that offers a lifetime warranty. Whereas Sunset Memorial is a lifetime warranty on the granite, but only 10 years on the workmanship. So we could have future maintenance costs on our existing columbarium as there's extra fixtures that are attached to the external of the columbarium that may need repair in the future.
Yeah, and I'll tell you straight up, there is very little maintenance on a columbarium. There's very little wear. They don't move around. There's no moving parts, I hope. So, that one doesn't. And as far as Rock of Ages has their own quarry, they do their own granite. That's correct. But they supply granite to pretty much anybody that's building monuments in this country gets their granite from Rock of Ages. They are a massive wholesaler of granite, and you can custom order whatever you need. You custom order it from Rock of Ages, and then all the monument company does the etching, right? So, Rock of Ages is a very big outfit, but those don't hold enough weight for me to. I'd rather see a much more local piece, and if there's issues, it's easy to give a lifetime guarantee because, like I said, once the door is closed, it doesn't open again, right? So there's, like I said, there's no moving parts or anything. But Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'm reading over this quote and I'm a little confused by it. It appears that Sunset did not specify whether or not they were installing or installation. It also, extra doors not specified on quotation. Warranty period is, I saw that, but it's not a very complete spreadsheet, I guess. Maybe was Sunset given all this opportunity to fill in the blanks as Rock of Ages did? Did we ask them why they didn't do it? I'm sort of with Craig in that if they've already done it and at our facility and we've used them and we know they do good work, I kind of lean towards a local supplier. But can you answer those questions for me?
Thank you, Councillor Kinghorn. They did supply spare doors with our first columbarium, so I would say they would, supply extra spare doors for another new columbarium as well. They just didn't specify how many doors in their quote. And I'm not sure, yeah, delivery and installation wasn't specified as if it was included or extra additional, and I didn't clarify that on the quote, so that would need to be clarified.
And I also see they didn't quote on the 3 times 108. Was everybody asked to quote on the 3 times 108?
On the multiples,
Yes.
I can't recall for sure if I did ask them to quote on the multiples or not, if there's a price discount for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Masterman.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So just on the niches, aluminum versus plastic, what's the deal?
Thank you, Councillor Masterman. So the niches are pretty well protected and housed within the granite and the double locking doors. So it's just a cost savings. Nylene is like a type of a plastic. It's durable. It's just more cost effective if there's no preference or concern, from the families of, storing their urns in a niche made of nylene, as opposed to a granite niche or an aluminum niche. It's just kind of a preference. There's different materials you can pay for to construct a niche from.
Okay, it's not a performance thing as such.
No, I wouldn't say so. Because like Craig said, typically you place an urn and then place a second urn, and then you don't really ever disturb them again.
Okay, perfect. I can't even believe I asked that, so thank you.
No problem.
Councillor McMillan.
Mayor Snodgrass, and thank you very much, Veronica. I'm leaning along the lines of Mayor Snodgrass because I had mistakenly read this thinking that Rock of Ages was already used. But I'm seeing that no, it's Sunset and Stone and how they are in Calgary. But I guess on that sheet where it's kind of giving the summary, it says local references have indicated that they provide excellent service. There's limited maintenance. But may I ask who are the local references that?
Well, thank you, Councillor McMillan. You mean the local references for Rock of Ages?
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
So we do have some existing Rock of Ages columbaria in our Highwood Cemetery currently. Like there are some columbaria that are owned by another funeral home. There's a little grouping there. But it was also Foothills County has placed a few Rock of Ages columbaria in their cemeteries, and they were highly recommending them.
Okay, thank you. I guess because before I was kind of in favor of Rock of Ages because I got it mixed up. I thought they were in Calgary, but I don't know. I guess I'm leaning towards the local company myself. If that whole lifetime warranty thing, like with the limited maintenance. So, and I guess I'm looking at Mayor Snodgrass because you're in the industry. So I guess a little bit of
The lifetime warranty is, to me, it's a moot point because it's a lifetime warranty on a rock. Like the only thing is there's little, and I really, the way the Sunset one is built that exists out there right now, is better than the Rock of Ages ones. The design and how we access those panels, how you do it. I've never had one better than the Sunset one. I'll just say that straight up. It's easy. There's 4 screws you take out. There's one key. You open the door and you're in. You're done. The other ones I've had problems with, and I don't know who. There's so many in the older ones that Snodgrass had put in, and they come from a mix of suppliers. There's Rock of Ages in there. There's KMI, and there might even be a Sunset one in there. But it's a mixed bag out there, and some are easy to access, and some after about 5 years the screws had corroded, and you had a hell of a time stripping screws and everything, trying to get and try doing that when you got a family standing there staring at you, trying to put dad into the columbarium, and you're fumbling around with a screwdriver with a strip.
Well, that's why I appreciate your feedback.
Yeah, it's a big it's a big part of, you know, all of these guys will build, you know, you build a columbarium, primarily build it so it doesn't leak. Last thing you want in there is water, right? And none of all the upright ones like this, the only time I've ever had one that leaked was they put one out in Foothills 20 years ago that they put it on a slant and the niches leaked and the niches filled up with water and destroyed all the urns. So, but you know, use your head first, right? You just don't do that. So these ones, all these guys will build the right product. I just, you know, the circle, the concrete circle and everything out there was designed with Sunset. And, you know, they'll give us the 108 in each. They'll give us the 48 in each. I'd like to go back to them and clarify a few more things with, you know, delivery costs and everything else, making sure that that's all in. I'm sure, looking at the quotes, I'm sure it is. But just to get a little more clarification, I'll go back to Jamie. Hand down, you're good. Are you in or you out, Kinghorn? You need something to say or what?
There we go. Okay, when I look at it, if you compare apples to apples, 108 in each, Sunset is $20,000 less money than Rock of Ages. When I go across, so $20,000 less for 108 for exactly the same thing. So I think we need to get them to look at the 3. If that's what we want is a price on 3, we should get them to look at the price on 3. Thank you.
I also believe that we need to ensure that delivery and installation is included because Rock of Ages, it is included in the price, where I'm believing Sunset Memorial and Stone, it is not included. So it'll depend on what the cost of delivery and installation will be.
And you know, the 3 extra doors, 4 extra doors, I think we would need at least 4 extra doors because it's basically between Lyle Reeves and Snodgrass Funeral Homes that handles these doors, even for other funeral homes that need to access them. So, and I think we've got 2 extra doors, maybe only 1, but 4 extra doors, and each of us could have 2, or the town keeps 1 kind of thing for other funeral homes, whatever. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Being that we have some incomplete information here, can we table this and come back to it? Because I don't think we're making a decision on anything today.
That's kind of what I had been scribbling down. I think we could, you know, if council wanted to, we can get the budget amendment dealt with. Because I think we can go with the $70,000, but that would give you more than enough money to get going on it. But also directing administration to return with a recommended supplier and clarity on comparables, so that everything's, you know, how many doors, installation in or out, is it this, right? Just so that we're comparing apples to apples. Is that fair, Chris? Okay. Is that clear, Veronica?
Yes, Mayor Snodgrass.
It's going to be awesome, you guys, because, and I'll tell you, like, the response that we've gotten from the new design and everything, and how well that was designed out there with the trees and the rose bushes and everything, and it's really going to look good this summer. But families, all of our families have been so happy with how that thing's going to look. So kudos to the town staff for building that thing properly the first go round, and making sure that it's going to be added to in a very classy way, I'll say. So I'll ask Councillor Cooey for a motion. The council approve the budget amendment for new niche columbarium in the amount of $70,000 and direct administration to return with a recommended supplier and clarity on comparables.
I will give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Well done, Veronica.
Thank you.
Event policy. Who's speaking to that one?
That'd be me, Mayor Snodgrass.
All righty, buddy.
Thanks very much. As part of our process that we undertook last February, we took a look at community development. Council identified developing a new special event kind of policy that clarified our role moving forward. COVID hit and that kind of took a back seat, and we finally got to it later this fall. And we've developed this new policy that you see before today, very specific, not mentioning the public realm, but talking about special events, very targeted from that perspective, being clear, plain language, and to the point. So through this process, the policy that you see in front of you has a clear approval process that's done and delegated to staff, and also has our role as the town as a facilitator of community events, not as a coordinator. We wanted to make it that very, very clear that the coordination of all these community-based events are the responsibility of those organizations and community groups that will be coordinating them. The event organizers within this policy will have very clear outlines on deadlines, requirements, risk identification, insurance requirements, as well as what the permit approval process will look like. We hope, and we really hope, that this does reduce some confusion, and the feedback that we received from some of the larger events so far has been that they're very happy with it. They have no concerns with the policy. But we want to make sure that we're managing expectations clearly and ensuring that the event organizers are able to plan for their appropriate special event in a more streamlined kind of manner. Organizationally, this policy has very minimal effect to changing how we do things, and same with financially, it doesn't really impact us substantially from that perspective. But what this does do is introduce new policy that clearly outlines what the roles and responsibilities are for both the town as well as the event organizers, and what those procedures will look like. Specifically, what the policy will do is it outlines the role and responsibilities, and I'll go to the policy directly and let everybody know. What we will do as the public landlord, as well as the facilitator, we will review and approve the special event permit applications. We will review and approve traffic accommodation strategies that include road and/or sidewalk closures as requested. We will review and approve the emergency response plans. We will supply barricades and garbage cans or no parking signage for traffic control. We will provide funding to community groups to assist with the implementation of any of those conditions, and that will be a budgetary consideration that council will have to consider each year. That will take forward and be divided amongst those core events that would be signature type events within the community. As the owner or as the operator of these events, we will not take part in any of the coordination of any of the events from that perspective. So we won't assist with any implementation of the event activities or the traffic accommodation strategy, or dedicate any staff support for the day of activities, and dedicate any staff to sit on any organizing committee besides providing impact or information on the special event permit process. Now, that doesn't that does not necessarily include having fire and the fire department at some of these events as well, having their presence being affected. That will be an exception to the policy. We felt that was probably important as well to base that based upon the requests that come in from the event organizers, what they will actually request. And I would go through for all the other emergency services outside the municipal enforcement. What that does mean, though, is like emergency management personnel from our emergency management program. So when our manager of emergency management has the emergency trailer there from that perspective for some of these events, that would not be part of this process, and that would be a special request from that perspective. So that's the rationale for the recommendation. Council has several options before it, but three of the core ones were either to proceed as proposed, defeat the recommendation, keep the existing public ground policy in place, or send this back to committee for further conversation and discussion. And that's the rationale for the recommendation. Mayor Snodgrass.
Thanks, Chris. Questions, comments? Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks very much, Chris. Just a couple questions when I was going through this, and maybe it's a step farther than we wanted to go. I just wondered if there was any benefit to having just in our arsenal for maybe someone new that's coming to the table to run an event, what an emergency plan might look like, just a sample. Maybe that, again, that's too far. I just thought if I'm new to the event organizing and not having a clue where to start, maybe that might be just another thing that we could bring forward. I think also, and not today, I certainly don't think we need to do it today, but maybe future, I think we need to keep an eye on the manpower from RCMP and bylaw and fire services that are supporting some of these events. There's a cost there. Obviously, if they're dedicated to a site, there needs to be someone dedicated to the rest of the town. So it might just have to be something in future we need to look at, that there is a fee associated with those services.
Thank you, Councillor Cooley. And that's something that we have applied in the past. If you recall, filming of Black Summer, we had some issues with traffic enforcement. And so in that example, we connected the RCMP with the film producer, and they paid an actual fee for having the RCMP on site through that whole day of filming. So that's certainly something that we can consider as an example, and something to be aware of. As well as the template, we can certainly provide a template or a sample from all the other traffic accommodation plans, emergency plans that we do see for other events, and provide that to new organizers and guide them through that process.
Just kind of a starting point.
Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So thank you, Chris, for this report. I just had a question about emergency management, and I noticed that they wouldn't be involved unless there was a special request. Why have they been involved, or have they have been involved in the past, but not extensively? Have they? Like, can you just speak to that history a little bit?
I'll try, Councillor Masterman. I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's been a desire to kind of please everybody and keep everybody aligned and safe, and that's great from an overall community safety perspective. But there's also a risk associated with that when we do have staff directly involved through the coordination, or their presence involved, dedicated, like emergency services or emergency management, that takes on a higher degree of risk and liability associated to the town. And so it transfers that risk. So, the history behind that, I think it was meant from a good purpose, a good position to kind of promote safety and presence. I think, when it's requested, I think it's something we can ask and make sure that we have the proper coverage. And if people and organizers are prepared to pay or prepared to use that as an education service for the fire service or anything along those lines, those are things that we can certainly accommodate. And as far as the other history, I don't know all the details of all the events, so I'm at a loss there to provide you that background. But I think that's probably the major intent, was just from a good position to try and promote extra safety, but it does expose us to additional risk from that perspective.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
I hope that answers your question, Bruce.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Kinda enough. Councillor Kinghorn.
You knew I was coming on, right? First of all, on the I support the policy in general and the way it's written, and a lot of effort's gone into it, and they've done a pretty good job on it, but there's still a few holes there that I think need to be looked at. The first one is the one page here. I'm just going up my page a bit. We've got an item 2, special events, A, B, C, D, E. Then it jumps to item 3. Are we missing an item 2, or is that just a typo? Is there something else that's supposed to be in there?
That's it. Thank you for pointing that out. That's a typo.
Okay, good. Then I'm not worried about anything that goes in there. When we talk about employee dedication, a lot of special events are taking place in our facilities, like a directplex, whether it be on the rink or the shuffleboard thing we had. And it's very clear in this policy that we're not going to be providing staff for special events. Does that mean that the organizers are going to be responsible for cleaning the rink and the facility, or are we going to have to massage that a little bit, depending on where they are and what they're doing?
No, that doesn't apply to our Bob Snodgrass Recreation Complex or the Memorial Center for that fact, because those are rental facilities. And there's a rental charge. That is the cleaning and management of those facilities is covered within that rental charge.
Okay, so it's, that'll be shown in there. Okay, great, thanks. Now we talk about fire and police, and we've been beating this back and forth quite a bit. I guess, and this seems to be because of the Heritage and Balloon Festival, but every parade has fire trucks, sometimes at the front, sometimes at the back. Every parade has police cars in them. Does this mean that we're going to look at pulling fire and police out of the 2 parades that we have?
No, that does not on parades aspect of things. Those are requests, and those requests are fulfilled not from an emergency perspective to be there as a presence, but to be there as a ceremonial indication of support. So other staff are also still at the fire hall at the RCMP station that are manning for any emergency perspective.
Okay. Then it does talk about aircraft in here, and it says to go to the town's website to look at the application for more details. I went to the town website and looked, and under aircraft, all it has is just a box. Does your event have aircraft included? Mm-hmm. Naturally, with the balloon event, we do have aircraft. That's all we are is aircraft. Yeah. Is there something else that's going to be linked to that down the road?
What we want to make sure is that everything's identified, and then we can ask the proper questions when it comes to other regulatory requirements that may rely that. So for aircraft, we would require some Canadian transport permitting from that perspective for any special event. So I take it for your special, for the balloon blow in particular, Jamie, that you have to go through Transport Canada and get a
special flight operation certificate. It's called an SFOC, and we get one for both the flying part and the glow part, and it is very detailed, working with Transport Canada to get that in place. They're very, very diligent about what they do. Last one on the garbage. This has always been kind of a thing to us, and I like the way it's written here. But would it be possible for event organizers to contract or hire the town's trucks, because they are specialized trucks that are used to empty those containers? Mm-hmm. And would that be an option down the road, do you think? I'd like to see it if we could do that.
Yes, Councillor King, I think anything like that could be a special request that's approved by council through the approval process. If it's a high demand opportunity from having those specialized garbage cans in place, then we could certainly work into a fee structure of some kind.
Okay, excellent, because we'd sure like to have that option available. And lastly, it talks about public lands throughout the whole permit. How do we kind of capture some of this for private lands? Because the balloon event is held on private lands. And if I read that right, that this policy would not, that we would technically not have to apply for a special event policy and not try to work with the traffic controls and all the rest of it that are included in this. And I don't know if that was the intent. I don't know if that's good. Personally, I don't think it is.
Yeah, typically anything that impacts our public lands that may be an event on or off site, what I would term our public lands. So if it's on private land, say your festival, or not your festival, the balloon, sorry.
Balloon Festival.
The balloon festival, or a music festival on, say, a large field, they would have to have some kind of special event permit, because there'd be accommodations according to parking, accommodations for traffic control that they would have to go through. And so anything that's going to have an impact on a neighborhood or a community would have to go through some kind of permitting process. May not be a full-blown special event permitting process, but would have to seek some kind of approval from that perspective to use our public roads and public sidewalks from that for parking and for access.
Are we going to get something down the road to make sure that that's clear in here? Because it's not very clear right now, and I think we should have it.
And it's really difficult to provide clarity on that. We don't see a lot of events on private lands. The balloon glow is the only one that we have that it sees on private lands that we would have direct control or direct impact on what we do. So it's something that we need to take a look at. We need to find a way to manage a bit better, but in all the sampling that we've been able to find, even the public ground policy as it's worded right now does not apply to public or private lands, only to public lands.
What about the ag grounds? That's not part of the town. That's obviously in the county.
Mm-hmm.
They've had some significant events and are planning some,
if
we ever get over this COVID thing, to have more significant events. This policy probably wouldn't apply to them as well out there?
No, but it would apply for lands, for example, for the any of our park spaces, any of our roads, any of our laneways, any of our green spaces that are not developed parks, any of and anything that we think, and we would want to work with organizers if there was something to be, say, on a school board property, for example, that may impact traffic movement or traffic flow, that we would encourage them to go through the special permit approval process, because logically there will have some kind of impact with it within the community, be it parking, be it traffic flow, be it the desire to have emergency services present or available. So those types of things. So we would encourage all event organizers, but the application to private lands is a little bit more difficult to deal with. And the only true way to deal with special events on private lands is actually through the land use bylaw. And that's more restrictive than through a permit process and being collaborative. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I like I said at the outset, I'm going to support this policy. I just think that these are things we need to be aware of, and that everybody needs to have it. Events are so important to High River. We need to be working with the organizations as opposed to putting up roadblocks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinghorn. And from a town perspective, we would hope as the balloon glow continues to grow, that a more appropriate site that is easily accessible and more prominent may come available that would be more appropriate from that perspective. And with the group, we're prepared to look and try and find what meets their parameters as well, and see where we can move into a different location.
Well, I could speak for the board. We have discussed this, and the balloon event board is more than happy to collaborate with the town if there's suggestions or something else to come along. There's as with any change like that, there will be some issues that we have to deal with, but certainly the balloon board is more than welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So just really quickly, Chris, I just wanted to say that this policy has been a long time coming, and a lot of discussion went into it, a lot of work, and I really like the simplicity of the basic message, which is that the town of High River will support and help facilitate, but will not coordinate. I mean, that's a pretty simple slogan or operating principle that we can all remember. And when we're asked about this, we can, there's a lot of policies that are harder for us to try to explain to people. And but to me, this is just really really simple and direct and very clear. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Massman. And that was, a credit to council. When we sat through the facilitated session defining community development and especially special events, council was very, very clear on that we did not want to get into coordination of events, and that we were there to support and facilitate and assist through the permitting process, but not to be there for day of events. And that was very, very clear. And we, Janelle developed this policy, and I'm going to, Janelle did this entire work. She would be here if she hadn't had a previous commitment. And she did a really good job putting that clarity in place. And I think it provides, and plain language to the people. I think to the public as well, the use of public realm is confusing. And as you start to get to know me, I'm a very plain language, get rid of the jargon kind of stuff. And let's call it what it is. And it's a special event policy. And I think that was the tack that we took when we were developing that, and working with Janelle. She took that direction very well and developed this policy. So thank you.
Chris, I'm going to add one piece to this motion in that council adopt the special event policy and return with recommendations to clarify the permitting on private lands, permitting needs on private lands. I think Jamie's absolutely right. There's nothing in there now. We need to, and it is a land use bylaw thing. It needs to be spoken about in there. Just so it's as clear as the rest of the document. That seems to be the only real missing piece that might come up, and it doesn't have to be big. It's just when it comes up, if you're using that because that Adams piece of land gets used or could be used for multiple things, not just the balloon glow. So I think just having that clarity in there while we're doing this, just to polish that up a little bit, would be important. So I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman that council adopt the special event policy CAOPOL 103-00 and return with recommendations to clarify permitting needs on private lands within the town of High River.
I'd be happy to make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Well done. Well done to Janelle. That's a long time coming, that one, much needed. Lease of municipal lands, this is a pretty easy one. Just kind of updating from where we were before, as Stella said, or Rogers, not Telus, Rogers, had delays because of COVID to get this thing in. Jody, I'll let you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the consideration of re-entering into a lease agreement with Rogers Communications for a cell tower on town lands just south of the Ag Society grounds. Like you say, I'm hoping it's fairly straightforward. I won't go into all of the details that are in the council package. However, I am still happy to answer any questions you may have regarding that information. The circumstances are that back in 2019, the town entered into an option to lease with Rogers. And when they were ready to start construction, that would trigger the actual lease agreement with the town. Now, because of delays due to COVID-19 and the pandemic and restrictions, they were not able to commence construction within the deadline of the exercise date, which was October 2nd. Because of this, they have come back and asked us if we would enter into a new lease that would start May 1st, and then the lease payments would be triggered to begin the first day of the next month after construction begins. Rogers is hopeful to start construction later this year. However, we are still in the midst of the pandemic, and projects of this nature are sensitive to delays. Apparently, the exact issue is that, I didn't know this, the tower parts actually are shipped from overseas. So always learning something new. Anyways, there is no requirement to repeat the circulation that was done back in 2019 by planning. However, according to the letter of concurrence, Rogers has until June 5th, 2021 to commence construction or apply for an extension. So because we're coming up on that June 5th date, That date has been brought to the attention of Rogers, and they are looking to apply for an extension and get everything in order so that they do not have to repeat that circulation. Mr. Mayor, I do apologize for the length of the resolution you must read next because we wanted to make it fully comprehensive. But with that summary, I am open to answer any questions regarding this information or that recommendation.
You honestly think I'm going to read all this?
Yeah.
Fine. I got asthma, you know. Any questions, Councillor Nychuk?
Thanks. Just a point of clarification. In the start of this, it talks about 400 meters, and then in the actual agreement, we've gone to goes 400 to 600, and then down in the legal, it's 625 or thereabouts, approximately 625. I'm assuming in the first part I read of the recommendation in the second whereas for approximately 400 square meters. And then the reference to 600 and then the 625 is just a little bit muddled. So are we talking the 625 that's down in the lease agreement? Or are we talking the 400 that we initially mentioned in the request for decision?
Thank you very much, Councillor Nychuk, for picking up on that. That would be typos on my end, putting this into the request for decision process. Initially, back in 2019, we were considering about 400 square feet, and it was based on an actual survey when Rogers was able to get out to site and have a better understanding of the layout of the land. In the end, it did end up being 625. So I do apologize that that is inconsistent through the request for decision. It should be 625.
Thanks, Jody. Not trying to point a finger. Thank you for your presentation. Very comprehensive. It comes down to dollars and cents for me, and I was like, if they're increasing the footprint, then I want more money. But thanks.
And I mean, to be totally honest, there, that question did come up in preparing this request for decision. Is this the opportunity to potentially ask for more money? I did connect with our Rogers rep. They did say, and I quote, the lease rate would need to remain unchanged if at all possible. So they gave us a tiny sliver of window.
Oh, the door is open, Jody. That's wide open.
So my concern was that I didn't want it to come across as us trying to take advantage of the pandemic circumstances. So, I mean, yes, like you say, that door has been opened. We could go back and look at the actual square footage wise and make some, start some discussions based on that. That's council's prerogative, and I will take whatever direction council sees fit.
I didn't want to open up a Pandora's box. Snodgrass is kicking me under the table right now anyway.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah, virtual boot. So
thanks. I'm good. If you bring it to us, it's fair. I'm okay with it.
So the 600 square meters that's in the recommendation is correct?
Yes.
That is correct, right? Okay.
Well, it's in the recommendation, it's listed as approximately 600. I think it is actually at 625 based on their survey plan.
Okay. We're okay with that? Yeah, I don't think it's a big, okay. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that council direct administration to enter into an updated lease agreement starting May 1st, 2021 with Rogers Communications, Inc. for approximately 600 square meters that forms part of the municipal lands legally described as Northeast Quarter Section 12, Township 19, Range 29, west of the 4th Meridian, 429-1912 Northeast for the placement of a cell tower for a term of 5 years for $10,000 annually with options to renew for an additional 5-year terms up to a maximum of 20 years with a 15% increase to the annual rate at each 5-year extension, including a clause for the town to have the ability to provide 2 years notice for early termination after the first 10 years. And the council authorized the mayor and CAO to execute the updated lease agreement.
Mayor Snodgrass, I'd be happy to make that motion for you, but you cut out right after you started. Can you repeat it? I'm kidding. I make the motion for you wholeheartedly. Thank you.
If you didn't hear it, I'll repeat it. Anybody else have the same request? No, I'm seeing head shakes. All right, we don't have that kind of time. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
Pool referendum.
Thank you. So good afternoon, Mayor and Council. In early 2021, Council directed administration to proceed with initiating a referendum process regarding the expansion of the existing aquatic facility. Under the Local Authorities Election Act, Council must establish the date for the vote on the question, appoint a returning officer and a substitute returning officer, and establish the wording for the question that will be used on the ballot. We are recommending that the returning officer and substitute returning officer for the general municipal election also be responsible for the referendum, and that the referendum is held on the same date as the municipal election. In addition, the RFD includes the proposed question for Council's consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Councillor McMillan.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Kara. So just a couple questions. The $30,000 for the contracted services, is that for enumerators?
So that's for your deputy returning officer. That's basically the entire cost of the election. So to get to print the ballots, to rent the tabulators, it's all of it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then just regarding the referendum question, is there going to be a noted tax implication on that? I thought we had discussed before that there would be some information for voters to see the actual potential tax impact.
So I think the information is kind of separate from the question itself. So Donna and I have worked together with members of senior leadership to develop a very detailed, comprehensive communications plan that will provide a lot more information. What's really important for the question that's going to be on the ballot is that it's very, I don't want to say simple, but it's simple and in plain language and easy to understand. And then we can make sure that we get out ahead of it and make sure that we've done all the informing kind of leading up to that process. So that's the intention of how it's written currently.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thanks, Kara.
No problem.
Yeah, there's a couple of things in there that I was talking with Kara and Chris about, Councillor McMillan, being that one, very good point, the tax implications, that's going to be critical for people making this decision, but also, you know, for the $15 million, what do we get, right? So there has to be a very lengthy and detailed communications plan and a package that people can access that outlines everything. Here's the design, here's what you get, this is the $15 million. You know, council has to understand what the $15 million, that once you commit to the 15 million, better have all your ducks in a row, because $15 million and $1 is out of the question. We cannot be going over. So this is not a project that's going to be taken lightly in any way, and we have to have all our questions answered. And just because the referendum, you know, if the referendum comes back and says yes, go ahead and build the pool, and 3 months later we look at it and go, well, the number's 22 million now. Well, you know, that changes everything. Or for 15 million, all you do is get a plastic wading pool, right? That's not going to cut it. So council has final decision still, regardless of the referendum. The referendum is there to allow the community to have a direct vote on this thing and provide direct feedback like that. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Kara. Just a question, and I don't want to make it any more complex. I was just curious if in the wording it should say up to 15 million. Likely that it's not going to be under. I just would like your opinion on that, and I'm not. If you think less is better, then leave it at that.
So this question is up for debate. I guess I'd have to kind of defer more on the numbers specifics to Riley or Chris, as I'm not the best person to speak in terms of whether it's going to be under 15 million.
And Councillor Cooey, adding those words in there would not change the intent of the resolution at all, or the question. So adding that as a clarity, up to $15 million, I think would be appropriate as well.
Councillor Masterman.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So I just have a question for probably Chris and Kara both. I believe also as part of the municipal elections, there's also going to be a provincial referendum, and on equalization payments, I believe, and I'm just wondering, how do we help people keep everything straight on the ballot? You know, and I wouldn't mind some kind of general comments on that. I mean, apart from the fact they're electing a new council, and voting on the swimming pool and voting on equalization payments, which, you know, is another level of government. I'm just wondering how do you help people keep it all straight?
So I can kind of take a first crack at that. So there's also another piece that's kind of layered on top of that, Councillor Masterman, is they're also talking about a Senate election as well that we'll be running as well. So absolutely very, very complicated and a lot of different moving pieces kind of going on. And so I think at the end of the day, it's all going to come back to our communications plan and how we roll that out and communicate effectively to our residents about what's going on, what are they going to see on the ballot, what are the choices before them, to be very clear about, you know, what specifically is happening in High River, because there may be other referendum questions going on in other communities they might hear about on the news and things like that. And so I really think it's going to come down to how well we communicate kind of in advance and prepare the public to attend at the polls in advance. But I'll maybe turn it over to Chris to see if he has anything else.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. Councillor Masterman, in our communication strategies, to be very, very frank and open and honest with the public of what this will actually cost and the implications of what they're going to pay for and what they're going to get. So, you know, our framework right now that we're putting together and finalizing is not so much any town hall meetings to try and sell the project. It's purely saying, here's the facts. $15 million is potentially going to get you this, and it's going to cost you X number of dollars on your property tax per year. And what that structure is, and hopefully through the May, June, July, August kind of time frame, that we can build and clarify questions that come in, so that for voting day it's very, very clear. We don't want to complicate any communications once the campaigning process starts. We want to stay clear of that, but we want to make sure that they understand that there's a clear message of what they're getting, what they're voting, what they're saying yes or no to, from that perspective. And we need to be, it's going to be, there's the additional elections that are taking place that are non-municipal just complicate the issues and recognizes a little bit of a disregard for the importance of municipal election processes. We need to be fundamentally separate and segregated and left to do our business in the most efficient manner possible, with both the school board election that's taking place as well, which we're managing also, and making it clear that our candidates and whatever referendums we so choose to bring forward, we could have a whole host of them, are clear and concise to the public, that are not muddled with other pieces of paper that are floating out there. This is getting to an election that, I take a look at the American election process, where you have a ballot that's 3 pages long and is 6 feet in length, that you check and go from that perspective. And that's a concern. And it should be a concern. But we're going to do our best job possible to get the message out and making sure that it's clear what they're voting on. And maybe we tell them to ignore some of the other referendum questions that may be out there. More than likely, my history with provincial referendums being held at the same time as municipal elections, people don't vote for provincial mandated referendums at municipal elections. Their knee-jerk reaction is to say no. And so the result, I don't think, for the province will be very good from that perspective. And that's the history across this country, is that referendums done at municipal government elections have not turned out the best result for the province.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Chris. That's and Kara, good words. And it's certainly not up to the town of High River to clarify any other referendum. That'll be the provinces or the feds, whoever is bringing on other referendum or referendi. So, thanks very much.
Reduces red tape somewhere. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you. Kara, has there been any discussion, heaven forbid, that COVID's still around?
So we are planning the election as of right now with full COVID protocols in place. So we have been in touch with the medical officer for the region, who has said that all of our planning is completely on side with all of the COVID protocols as of right now. And so I think kind of our approach going forward is we're going to plan for the worst and hope for the best, knowing that we can certainly scale back if needed. But as of right now, we are, like I said, planning that if this is still here in October, we will be able to manage quite easily.
Thank you.
No further questions. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Moore that Council establish the date for the pool referendum as being October 18th, 2021, and authorizes votes to also be cast on advanced polling dates as determined by the returning officer, and that Council appoints Ms. Kara Rusk as the returning officer and Ms. Nicole Chappelle as the substitute returning officer for the pool referendum. And further, that Council establishes the pool referendum question to read as follows: do you support the town borrowing up to $15 million to expand the existing pool facility?
I will make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Proposed purchase of provincially owned properties.
Sorry, Mayor Snodgrass. Caught me off guard. As stated previously at our special camera meeting this morning, we've been presented with the opportunity to purchase both Beechwood, Wallaceville, and Rio Vista, as well as the 14 properties on High Park View, as well as Riverside Drive that were flood purchase properties. The Beechwood, Wallaceville, and Rio Vista would be purchased at $1 each, and the intended purpose would be for park use, passive recreation and park use in perpetuity for the community, while the homes on Highview Park Drive and Riverside Drive would be intended to be put back into the marketplace and put up for sale. The province requires a formal resolution and a letter from us getting this moving forward to the next level to accept their counteroffer of $3.5 million in change for those residential properties, so that it can go to the Treasury Board for early June this year, with the hopes that we would have an answer midsummer and the final sale will be completed by early to late fall. That is the rationale for the recommendation that you see before you today, and it's open for discussion or any questions. Thank you.
No, this is finally good news. It's been 8 years of work to get to this point. So that's what we're looking for. Lots of work to do yet, but if there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council authorize administration to proceed with an agreement for the proposed sale of the properties on Riverside Drive and Highview Park in the amount of 3.502735 million, and for Beechwood, Wallaceville, and Rio Vista in the amount of $1 each, subject to the sale conditions from the province, and that the province provide written conditions for the future use prior to approving the sale agreement, and that the funding for the purchase come from the Community Infrastructure Reinvestment Fund, and that proceeds from the sale of the subject lands be used to replenish the Community Infrastructure Reinvestment Fund, and further that pending the final sale agreement, council direct administration to prepare a capital budget amendment to fund the proposed purchase.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I'll be pleased to give you that motion. This is just another one of those things that has been hanging out there, and it's going to be great to see those homes occupied again. Thank you.
Well stated. Any questions, comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Council correspondence requiring action. Letter of support request. This is a new one from High River Performing Arts Foundation. Council's all okay with me signing that one. Parental Alienation Awareness Day. That one's in the package as well. Council's okay with signing that one. Safety and use bylaws of the Town of High River Library Board. What was the need? Was that just acceptance, Chris, on that, or just information only kind of thing? Kathy?
Sorry, Craig, any changes we make to bylaws have to come before council
Okay.
and be approved by council. And we just wanted to have some substance in our bylaw to give us some backing should we have any issues. For example, someone refusing to mask and other future situations that might come into play.
Gotcha. All of council is, or Carol, you have a question?
I do actually, because I guess where I'm a little bit confused is item 3.5. I guess I read it that 3.5 covers that all persons using the library shall comply with applicable public health regulations. Like, to me, that kind of already covers it. But now my screen's frozen.
Kathy, did you
I
get
can't
all
hear
of that?
anything.
I did, sorry. That's a really good point. I cannot answer the question to that, Carol, about the specifics.
Can you repeat, Carol?
Yeah, I just kind of wondered because it's very clear to me when it says. So 3.5 says all persons using the library shall comply with applicable public health regulations.
I guess maybe this is just opening up a little more.
Did I come out clear that time? Like, my screen keeps freezing.
Yeah, it shut off again. Kathy, can you kind of repeat if you know what Carol's talking about, please?
Yeah, no, I see where she sees they're really similar. I guess the only difference, and maybe almost 3.5 could be removed, but that it kind of covers health and safety. So it goes a little bit beyond just public health regulations. I can certainly take that back to the board to maybe clarify, but I do think that was the intention, was just to add a little more to that.
Yeah, well, and thanks, Councillor Cui. I just was a little bit confused because I thought with the public health regulations component of 3.5 that kind of covered it. So,
Councillor Masterman?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. So I don't know. I just think, does it hurt anything to have it in there? it just kind of underscores the importance, just as, like in co-op stores, even though it's a provincial health rule that people inside had to be masked, co-op corporately has made it a policy that people won't be allowed in their stores unless they're masked. So, and that just kind of reinforces it or underscores the importance of it. So, personally, I don't mind that 3.5 being in there, but
Chris?
Yes, yeah, I'm on mute. I think this clause 3.6 is more focused on the health and safety of the library staff. And so when you read 3.6, any person entering the library must abide by any measure put in place to protect the health and safety of library users and staff. So that goes in addition, not just the public health measures, but any measure that the board deems necessary to protect staff under OH&S guidelines. So that's the next step from that perspective. So I think this is another layer, and that's a little bit more specific to that health and safety perspective than just public health measures. And it could have been written a little bit better. It could have probably said occupational health and safety in there from that perspective.
Okay, is council okay with approving or accepting his information, I guess, is all we're really doing. We don't approve these. Hey, Chris?
Yeah,
it's always kind of weird to me. Like, what do you want us to do with it?
Yeah, it's basically receiving this for information. They must inform us of any changes to their bylaws, and so you have to accept them or receive them.
I don't like those motions. I don't get it. It's been here. It's been talked about. We can't rewind it. You can't take it out of your mind. It's in our minutes. We've obviously accepted these as information.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's okay with it? Thank you very much. However, Healthcare Heroes Day, same kind of thing as what happened last year. So do it again. Well deserved. It's awesome last year. Too bad we got to do it again, but we'll do it again. Do it every year. Don't need to buy an amateur. That one's good. Council correspondence, airport board, Guardston County. What is the MELT program courses? Can somebody explain that to me, what that is? I read that letter and I didn't really get clarity as to what it was. Anybody read it? Chris?
Oh. It's basically the entry-level training program for class 1 for farm producers, agriculture.
For class 1. It's just that class 1 license. That's all. That's what it is, right? Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Letter to Minister Savage regarding coal policy, municipal affairs, County of Painter, and the Town of High River Library Board minutes. So coal policy update. Quickly, good news on Friday where Minister Savage went with the recommendation from the coal committee and stopped exploration activities in Category 2 lands. Just any permits that were granted after February 8th, just as our motion stated. Clarity, it does not stop exploration that's in categories 3 or 4, but a much different ask. They were always able to go through. Next steps, I am two things. I'm having a quick conversation actually because Andy Caruso, the CEO of Atrum Coal, obviously sent all of myself and all of council an email wanting to come and educate us on the enormous opportunities from coal mining, which I'm more than happy to have him attend a council meeting so we can publicly address the questions. But I also think it's fair that I wanted to have just a conversation with him just to get clarity of what the purpose of the meeting was. So, I am scheduled to talk with Andy tomorrow morning at 8:30 just for quick 5 or 10 minute conversation just to get clarity on what he wants to talk about. And then at I think 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, I meet with the whole committee group that's handling all of the public consultations. So get more information on that as well. So that's all I got. Bruce.
Yeah, just really quickly. I think it's important that we note that as a municipality, we started things off municipality-wise on January 11th by asking for the reinstatement of the old policy, and obviously a lot of other municipalities and a lot of other organizations and First Nations and ranchers and everybody else were also asking the same thing. But we got that, and that was huge. There was some weird wording around mountaintop removal or open pit mining. But and then we asked for the end of exploration and along with everybody else. And we got that. And yes, as Craig mentioned, it doesn't include categories 3 and 4. It would have been great if it had been 2, 3, and 4, but 2 is the real sensitive lands. But I think one thing I really wanted to point out was the city of Camrose, the letter that was just in our agenda. By my count, that's the 31st municipality that has written something to the government since we started things back in January. And to me, that's just it's a tremendous showing. It just by going the populations of these municipalities, it's about almost 3.2 million people that are represented, and so almost 70, well, just over 70% of Alberta's population, and I just think I think that's really important that we acknowledge that and that we celebrate that a little bit. Yes, it's awful that we have to be, challenging our own government on things, but this is what Albertans do when we don't agree with things. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and also I wanted to thank the mayor for everything he's done to help bring not just High River to where we are right now, but Alberta, because he's been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes that hopefully we'll all hear about at some point. But thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Bruce, do you have in your list of municipalities? I'm curious as to how many in the Livingston-McLeod riding that you have. Do you have it broken down that way? You're muted. Sorry.
Yes. I don't have it broken down that way. It's interesting. There's a couple that are in Jason Nixon's constituency, but certainly in Livingston-McLeod. I know Okotoks isn't part of Livingston-McLeod, but Okotoks has done something. Nanton, Longview, Turner Valley, Black Diamond, Claresholm, MD of Ranchland, MD of Willow Creek, County of Foothills, and continuing down south, MD of Pincher Creek, the town of Pincher Creek. I actually have this as a Word document, and I can email it to all of you if you'd like. It kind of includes the actions that were taken, but yeah. Yeah, an awful lot.
Here's why I'm asking, Councillor Masterman. Our MLA, Roger Reid, was quoted and in an interview with Nanton News in saying that there's, he's representing the municipal concerns, and there's a balance of, some want coal and some don't want coal. There's hardly a balance. I know of 3 in this riding that I know of that want coal, and I don't even know if all of them are in the riding, but the only 3 that I know of in southern Alberta that want coal is Crow's Nest Pass, Fort McLeod. This is talking not the people of these towns. I'm talking their councils are promoting Crow's Nest Pass, mayor of Fort McLeod. I don't know how many of his councillors are with him, and Cardston. Those are the 3 when I've been in these southern mayoral reeve meetings with AUMA. Those are the only 3 that have spoken in favor of this stuff. So that's why I'm questioning the comments that our MLA has made, and I think he's slightly disconnected from the reality of the situation. So what I would like you to do is to drill the 31 that you have, and if you can pull out the ones that are in Livingston, McLeod, and just maybe send Roger a note that here's actually what's going on.
Yeah, and Mayor Snodgrass, I'd be happy to do that. And I think just on Fort McLeod, certainly the mayor is there's no secret. The mayor himself is a pretty pro UCP person, but the council of the town of Fort McLeod back on February 8th did resolve, have a couple of motions that to stop all coal exploration and no issuing of new permits until public consultations happen, and that Kenny do an immediate stop work order on all. So even that one,
even worse.
Yeah, it's even
Right.
worse. And definitely,
I think we need to just help our MLA out and
Yeah.
give the information that he needs.
okay.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, no, and I'd be more than happy to help educate them on Facebook as well. So, okay.
COVID-19 update. Chris? I looked this morning, we have 67 cases in High River.
Yes, so that's the most recent update. Today, I didn't hear today's numbers yet, but 67 active currently. Masks remain still required in all facilities. Our town office is at essential staff levels only currently, with about 4 to 6 people on a rotational basis coming in. Operations, COVID protocols remain in place, social distancing and masking when you cannot social distance from that perspective. We had some challenges with that. We've had some issues, and we'll be dealing with some non-masking in certain locations as well, based upon complaints. We are being a little bit challenged right now with some staffing issues because we've had a significant number of close contacts, especially with those that have had kids in school. And so they've had to go through isolation processes and protocols from that perspective, as well as increased injuries and the standard illnesses that we see as well. FCSS is still following the standard protocols and is open by appointment only, and masks are required within that facility. And recreation, you've all seen the FAQs that we've got posted on our website on what spring 2021 is looking like for recreation. The pool is open to limited programming right now, with household rentals as well as one-on-one fitness being available, and we are charging $30 per hour during this time of COVID. The field house is only available right now to youth sports, and we have lacrosse in there, and we've limited to 2 groups of 10 as per provincial direction, including coaches and maintaining physical separation of 2 meters. The walking track is open by reservation, and people can come in and walk in households, but masks have to be worn, and no very active physical activity, so high-paced activity is allowed. And we have planning underway for summer programs for both kids and adults, and we are maintaining our virtual programming as well through this process. So everything's in the FAQs of what recreation's doing. We hope that as the summer goes along, we get more and more normal. And that's our hope as our vaccination numbers continue to increase and our infection rates decrease. So if there's any questions, I'd be willing to answer.
Seeing none. I'm booked in for my vaccination, so pumped up for the jab. All righty. Further comments on that one? Questions? Meeting adjourned 5:24. Have a good night, everybody. Good meeting.